Hi. The film I will be talking about today is Tomorrow, directed by Joseph Anthony, starring Robert Duvall and Olga Bolin. This film was released in 1972, and while it was a hit with critics, unfortunately it failed to find a larger audience. When you see the film, you immediately understand why. Not that it's not a great piece of work, it's just simply the kind of film that's hard for a studio to know how to market. The screenplay for this film was written by Horton Foote and was based off of a short story by William Faulkner. And you can certainly see the Southern Gothic influence in this film. And I'm a big fan of Southern Gothic literature. Writers like Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor and Carson McCullers and Cormac McCarthy and several others that I'm probably leaving out. And one of the things that I love about Southern Gothic literature is his stance on morality and justice. It calls out the hypocrisy, the kind of collective hypocrisy that you find in small towns where everybody sees things through the same lens. Nobody ever dares go against the mainstream or maybe see it from someone else's point of view out of fear that they could be judged if they did. And that type of literature that always spoke for those that would often be afraid to speak out, a voice for the voiceless. Those themes run through this entire film. This film starts off with a lawyer giving a summation. We first see, as the lawyer's talking, this young man going to a girl's house. And you can kind of see it has this kind of clandestine feel to it as they're going to the car. They don't want to be seen. And as he gets to the car, we see her father come out of the house with a shotgun. And we also see that the boy has well, he's not a boy, he's probably like 20 or so, but the older you get, the more that seems like a boy. And he comes around the corner of the car, and when the father sees him with the pistol, he shoots him. And then it cuts to the courthouse with the defense attorney making his argument for H.T. Bookright, the man that shot Buck Thorpe, the boy that was coming to take the man's daughter away, making his argument, his summation to the jury about why they should acquit Bookright, and that Buck Thorpe was a menace to society, a blight on humanity, was no account, had never amounted to much. Anyone that knew him knew that. And you can kind of tell he's making headway with the jury. And it's when they show the jury that we first see Robert Duvall's character, Jackson Fentry. And as he's giving his summation, we also see Bookright and daughter sitting there on the side of the defense. And then it cuts to the jurors, to the jury room, and them all discussing, and they're all on the same page. They think that Bookright should be let to go, vote for the acquittal, let him get on with his life. It was no real loss. Nobody liked Buck Thorpe, and let's just get on with our life. And Robert Duvall will not vote to acquit. So it ends with a hung jury. Peter Masterson, the attorney who does the narration, and I have to say, it's a small part, but he does such a great job with that small part. His narration is spot on. He captures that Southern dialect that so many people in films it comes off like a bad Foghorn Leghorn parody or something of that nature. He has that intelligence to his voice, and it has a certain romanticism to it, but he does a great job with a small part. And he's curious as to why this one juror, just one, threw the whole thing off, because he knew it was that one vote and he knew it was him. And he's on a quest after this to find out why Jackson Fentry, who many consider this backwoods, no account cotton farmer, stood against 11 other men and wouldn't bend on this. And he says in the narration, I had just assumed that he'd lived his entire life in this town and never really done much of anything. But in inquiring about his past, he finds that over 20 years ago, he had gone to a town that I think they say in the film is about 30 miles from where they are. And he had worked as a caretaker at a sawmill during the wintertime when work wasn't being done. He was just kind of be the eyes and ears for them there, make sure things didn't get stolen, and kind of the upkeep of the place. And he goes there, and while he's on the farm, interesting little tidbit, the scenes on the farm, and this film was shot in Mississippi, the farm belonged to Tammy Wynette, the famous country music singer's grandfather, Chet Russell, and that's where it's filmed. So Duvall's there, and he lives in the boiler room next to the sawmill and seems content with this. It's a very isolated, lonely life, but you get the feeling watching him that that's what he's used to. And then one day he's out getting water from the well, and he turns and discovers this woman who has passed out. And when he goes over to her, discovers that she's pregnant. And this is the character Sarah Eubanks, played by Olga Bolin. And she does a wonderful job. And it's important to know that she was 40 when this was filmed. And in a lot of lesser movies, the female, and it's just the two of them in this movie for the most part, the scenes with them in the boiler room where he lives, they would try to pick somebody who's subtly beautiful or striking, kind of like what they did in Cold Mountain with Nicole Kidman. It's supposed to be a Civil War epic, yet Nicole Kidman looks like she just stepped out of Vogue magazine. Whereas instead, with this film, it wasn't the thing like a Beauty and the Beast type trope that so many Hollywood films are a slave to. And you've seen 1,000 of them, The Princess, the Frog, and she sees in this poor down on his luck guy something that nothing else does. It's not like that. You can tell when you see her that she's been down a rough road herself. And when she regains consciousness and sees him, he inquires about what's going on. How did you get here? And he finds out that she was on her way to a general store, and he's like, well, at least just come into the boiler room with me and kind of get your, regain your health a little bit before you go on about your way. Just take some time to catch your breath. And she agrees. And she goes in, and they continue to talk, and he finds out she's been abandoned by her husband. And then he inquires, don't you have any people that you could go to? And she then says that her family has cut ties with her because of the man that she married. So this is somebody who has nothing. And he pleads with her to stay there with him so that he can take care of her. That's all he really wants. He just wants to be of use to her and doesn't feel right seeing her leave or just go on about her way. He knows he can actually help her, and that's all he really wants to do. And eventually she acquiesces and allows it. And the more time they spend together, you see that these are two damaged people coming together who society has overlooked, especially Jackson Fintry, the Duvall character. And when you see the film, you'll notice he has a certain speech pattern and a certain way of holding himself. And it's not so much that he's mentally challenged. It's almost like he's a feral human being. He's lived his life in isolation. You don't get the feeling that he's educated. He's been on a farm, never really come across much, and yet inside of that, there's this dignity and decency, this desire to help, that you just see it boiling over inside of him. And that's why when he sees her, it's his chance to maybe help somebody out. He has no hidden agenda. And Foote does such a great job at writing for characters like that. Tess Harper, who is also in Tender Mercies, described Horton Foote as a quiet man who writes for quiet people. And that is Jackson Fintry in a nutshell. He's not a flamboyant character. He's very to himself. And yet you can't not see the humanity inside of him. And as their relationship progresses, there's a scene that's really beautiful where he takes her to this spot of land where the owners of the sawmill said, if things go well, we'll build you a house there. And he shows her, and it's a really pretty piece of property, and he's telling her what he would have and things of that nature. And you get the feeling that this is the first time he's ever shared one of his dreams with somebody, something that he's aspired for. And not only that, you also get the feeling that this is maybe the first time in his life he's ever even been allowed the opportunity to dream. And seeing them share that moment, seeing him finally have something to hope for, to aspire to, and also somebody to talk to about it. It's a very powerful scene and shows that how life is kind of void without that kind of human connection. And As she goes further along with her pregnancy and health issues arise, he makes inquiries into that he would like to marry her. And she explains, well, my husband's still alive, so it couldn't happen. And he's steadfast in this, but in a way that's not pushy or lascivious. It's just out of, he knows, and we know, that he can love her in a way, and already does, that nobody else has or nobody else will. And eventually, as the pregnancy nears, she takes him up on his offer. And she also makes him promise that he will raise the child as his own. And he does. Unfortunately, after she gives birth, she passes away. And Duvall returns to the farm with his father, with this baby in tow, explaining that he is now the father of this child, and basically says, I'm going to name him Jackson Longstreet after the two generals that you fought for in the war. And the movie then cuts to the boy being about 5 years old, I would say. And you see that this has given him something that he's never experienced, something that he can love completely. It's boundless. And he's receiving it back. And he feels that he's been given the best gift in the world, to be a father to something, to be there for someone, to teach them, to be an advocate, to anything. He looks at it as such a privilege. And then Sarah Eubanks's brothers show up. And they're taken there by the former, well, not the former owners, his former boss, the owners of the sawmill. They know where he lives. And they show up and they inform him, his father has given us the right to take him, and we're going to raise him up as a Thorpe. And he tries to fight it, but he's outnumbered, and they got the law on their side. And he puts up somewhat of a fight, and he knows it's an exercise in futility, but he still fights. And you see the boy taken from him, and as I said, they were going to raise him up as a Thorpe. And it's at that point that we realize that that boy grew up to be Buck Thorpe. And he's crestfallen, obviously. He didn't just figuratively or put up a fight, he literally put one up. And as he's dusting himself off and walking away, the owner of the sawmill said, look, I can talk to some people and maybe we could do this or things like that. And Jackson Fentry doesn't even acknowledge it. And it's at this point where the narration picks back up from Peter Masterson. And I love what he says. He says that when he found this out, his search for why what happened was pretty much over. And that when he found this out, he said it hit me as though I had just realized it for the first time, that this world didn't run the way it's supposed to be. And I think that line hits all of us when we hear it. We can all think of situations like that where it just seems that the deck is stacked against certain people and their odds seem insurmountable, while other people have an abundance who have gotten it in ways that are morally repugnant. And yet those honest, quiet, decent people who get up every day, quietly do the right thing, and their only really desire is to help and to love and to be of use. And this world looks past them and pushes them to the side. And not only do we do them a disservice, but we do ourselves a disservice. We miss out on these great people. And it then cuts to him leaving the courthouse after he was the lone vote. And it showed, or it doesn't show, you hear the narration again of the defense attorney saying, I underestimated the type of love that still existed inside someone like Jackson Fentry. I thought that based off of his background and the life that he'd led, that would have been beaten out of him a long time ago, but it was still there. And he now understands perfectly. He couldn't acquit Bookright for killing Buck Thorpe, because to him, Jackson Longstreet, the little boy that was his world, still lived within Buck Thorpe. And the fact that he would always remain the apple of his eye regardless of how it went, and that he would advocate for him and his life till the end. This quiet, no account farmer that most people would look past. And yet he has a morality and a decency that most of us should aspire to. So I really hope you give this film a look. It's probably not something you would ever find at Barnes & Noble in the DVD section. You can see it on YouTube. Normally, I wouldn't enjoy watching a movie on YouTube, but with this one, it's worth it. So I hope you give it a try. More videos will soon follow. Until then, thanks.